This is Christian Gomez with the New American Magazine, and today we have with us on the program frequent guest Heather Hobbs, a speaker with the No Exceptions pro-life organization Save the One. Now, Heather, normally when we have you on the program, you're commenting about news in relation to the pro-life situation across the country,
Yeah,
but today you are the subject of the news, are you not?
I am Christian.
So it sounds like you were the subject of persecution, if you will, for being a pro life conservative. Heather, can you tell us what happened to you?
So ultimately, as my friends at the New American know, I recently had a surgery, a life-saving surgery to remove a mass from my neck, and I had a lesion on my brachial plexus. So I had this really big surgery, and it was in Portland, which, as you know, is the Antifa capital. And I was unaware of the why or how, but I realized later that I was being discriminated against solely because I am a pro life advocate, a conservative, and for my values. And one of the Antifa members, I believe, has called CPS on me. And it took me a while to figure that out. But as I learned more and more, I learned that there were multiple calls on me. And I had someone actually send me a screenshot where on Twitter there is a Join Antifa page that has now since been shut down. And they were saying that if you know of any Trump supporters or conservatives that are out there openly and they have young children, that you can call CPS on them and that CPS will investigate it even without any evidence and that you can do it anonymously. And so that is what has been happening here in Oregon.
Wow. So, what exactly were the events that led to your CPS, I guess, open investigation that now is occurring against you?
So the investigations are all closed out against myself. And I believe that honestly is because I'm very active in my community. I have a lot of really great friends. We have a good friend who's a lawyer, and I have several, doctor friends that are all willing to stand up for me. However, there are many families that don't have those people to be there to fight for them. And so my purpose in coming forward and sharing my story was hopefully that so these parents who have no idea why this may be happening to them, that they have, the news out there that this is happening to multiple people. And I've found multiple families that this has happened to. So on August 28th, I had a nurse and my entire family was in the room. And this nurse was typing on the computer, doing some chart notes. I had my baby laying on me. She had fallen asleep breastfeeding. One of my sons was at my feet watching a show. My other daughter came up to hug me and she said, "Mommy, I want to be a pro-life speaker like you one day." And I told her that, I asked her if she wanted to be a doctor like she had said she wanted to be, and she said she wanted to be that too. And as we were conversing, I had noticed that the typing on the computer had stopped, but the nurse was still standing and staring at the screen. And so my daughter's just kind of conveying to me. She has a lot of strong beliefs and values, and she's talking about empowering women and how she wants to help women. And the nurse turns to me, and she has this really dark, angry looking face, and she says, "So you're pro-life?" And I said, "Yes, I am. I used to be pro choice, but because of these children, they've changed my heart to be pro life with no exceptions." And so the conversation really didn't go further from that. And so at that moment, I didn't have any reason to think that anything was going to happen. She was my nurse for the rest of the day. She was very cold to me, and she was giving me IV medication really fast that burned really bad. She just changed. She went from being a perfectly pleasant nurse to learning that I was a conservative believer, and now she was treating me very badly. And so my decision at the end of that day was I'm just going to pray for her. I'm going to pray that her heart is changed and that she will stop being so angry because you could just feel that change of darkness. And so the next day, I had a new nurse on Thursday, the 29th, and that new nurse was also my nurse on Friday the 30th. Friday the 30th is my husband's birthday. And me not having a reason to be distracted, of course, I forgot his birthday. So I was just, oh my gosh, I gotta find a cake to get to my husband. And my husband and children were staying at lodging, which is associated with the hospital, and they offer a very discounted lodging. It's $50 a night, and downtown Portland, the hotels easily exceed $200 or $300 a night. So it was a wonderful blessing that they were able to stay there. And when you check into this lodging, you go through a questionnaire that you don't have any felony convictions, you haven't been convicted of any violent crimes against others, you don't have an open CPS investigation. All of these things are asked, and of course, we passed all of those things. But when I went to call this lodging to find a place that'll deliver a birthday cake for my husband, they ended up picking up, and the woman, she cut me off and said, "Why didn't you tell me you're a baby abuser?" And I just was really stunned, like, do you have the right person? And she continued to go off on me, and I was starting to get really overwhelmed because I didn't understand what was happening. I just had surgery. I just got out of the ICU. I was in a lot of pain. I went from feeling super excited to surprise my husband and children with a cake and pizza, and now all of a sudden this woman's telling me I'm a baby abuser. I had no idea what was going on, Christian. I was just floored, and she ends up hanging up on me, but not before telling me that my husband and children needed to leave immediately, and she was going to call the social worker. And she never gave me the social worker's name. She never gave me a number. I had no idea where these allegations came from, and I didn't understand how I was being labeled a baby abuser. There were just so many questions, and so I called my husband after the receptionist at the lodging hung up, and I told my husband that he had to pack up and leave, and I don't know what's going on yet. And uh, I I just started panicking. I started crying hysterically, and because of that, my nurse that day came running in my room because my heart had exceeded well over 160 beats per minute. And I told her between tears what had just occurred and how I don't know what's going on, and I don't know why somebody would call, and that I've never had this happen to me before. And she sat down at the end of my bed and she says, "Oh my gosh, I didn't think it would go this far."
So she
And then
knew
I
something
stopped.
you didn't know.
Yes, that I stopped crying, and I looked at her and I said, "What are you talking about?" And she just looked down at the ground and she told me how the day before, on August 29th, one of my nurses from earlier in the week um, came to the nurses station and tried to rally multiple nurses to call Child Protective Services on me, saying that she was fearful for my baby's life because I was breastfeeding on a post-surgical pain medicine that was being given via IV, and that she felt that the baby was in danger and she wanted to have multiple nurses call with her. So all of the nurses, being surgery nurses, said, we've had many breastfeeding mothers. We think this one's fine. We've never had a problem with it before. But my nurse from Thursday and Friday said, you know what, I'll call the lactation nurse, I'll call pharmacy, and I'll call the surgeons, and I'll make sure that it's safe. So she did all of that. All of those places verified this is a safe for breastfeeding post-surgical pain medicine that was being given, and it's in a hospital setting, and everything was fine.
And it was
So
your previous nurse also who was the one who administered that medication to you, was it
yes,
not?
yes, this
And
nurse,
she didn't say anything about it at the time.
no, she never came to me and said, "Excuse me, Mrs. Hobbs, I'm nervous about this medicine while you're breastfeeding. Would you please stop breastfeeding until I could verify it's safe?" She never said anything. Like I said, for the rest of the day, she was cold and dark towards me. She said almost nothing. And now I have learned that this woman who treated me differently, she was the one who called Child Protective Services on me, and she also consulted with all the other nurses. And those nurses told her there's no reason to call, but she still went ahead and proceeded with that phone call.
So she consulted the other nurses to get them to agree with her that CPS should be called, but in reality, she had already called CPS ahead of time, correct?
That's correct.
So she
And
violated a sort of a policy or a code of conduct, if you will, among the nurses
yes.
then regarding procedure. So what did the hospital and nurses or hospital staff do in response to this CPS case that should never have been opened, now being opened?
So my first course of action, because I do have a lot of familiarity with the medical world and hospitals, my first response was I want a patient advocate immediately, and I want the social work department called immediately. And so my nurse said, "Of course, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. This never should have happened." And I reported it. I did an official report. Most parents don't even know that they can get a patient advocate involved or that they're there or what their purpose is. And so the purpose of that is to make sure an official complaint is filed, at which point the hospital is required to respond to every complaint. And as I was filling out all of the papers and talking with different hospital representatives, I had many nurses and a pain doctor and a swallow study specialist all come to my room and tell me how angry they were with this nurse and how they're so sorry and this never should have happened to such a good family. And at the end of the day, my surgeon came in, the primary surgeon, because I had multiple, and he was pacing and he's like, "This is unacceptable. This is going to the top. I'm not going to let this happen. This is not fair. This is not okay." And I learned that this nurse violated the hospital's policy, not only in reference to like the standard kind of nurses code, what they do, you know, off the books. They consult with each other before they make calls. But there's also a policy I learned that's in place that they cannot make a call without following this proper policy, the protocol. And so this nurse violated that protocol, and she also violated the trust of the other nurses because she consulted with them and still went ahead and proceeded with this phone call.
But now that this has gone to CPS, it's out of the hospital's hands, correct? The hospital can't
Yes,
undo the CPS case or close it.
that's correct. They cannot undo a call. Once a call is made, every call must be addressed by CPS representatives. And because of how upset my surgeon was, and because I had filed a report, I honestly truly believe that God was watching out for me that day. If I did not call that lodging and have the intention of getting my husband a birthday cake, CPS would have just taken my children. And then we would have had to deal with the repercussions. But because I learned ahead of time, right in the beginning, I was able to get my surgeon to really advocate for me. So he wrote a letter to CPS. The hospital called on my behalf, and they all of them said, we have multiple nurses that felt like this was wrong, and she did not follow policy. And so CPS ended up closing out this particular case because of the letter that was sent on my behalf and the multiple phone calls and the multiple doctors that were advocating for me. However, when I talked to the CPS worker that next Monday, which I believe was September 2nd or 3rd, she had told me that, once she gets the letter and reviews it, she'll close it out. It's no problem. And I said, "I'm so sorry. I just can't believe all of this is happening. And I'm so upset." And she said, "Well, you had 2 calls in a week." And I said, "What? What do you mean 2 calls in a week?"
So
And she
there's a
said,
second CPS case against you?
"Yes, there was a second call made against me." And so I had the call from the nurse saying that I had attempted to poison my infant with my breast milk to potentially kill her. And I learned that there was another call made that she said she already closed out because it was ridiculous. That was her words. But someone had made an anonymous report saying that they came to my house and knocked on my door and that there was no answer and that I'm a terminally ill mother and they heard children inside and they're in fear of the children being neglected. And she said that she closed that case out already without reviewing it because, you can't get in trouble for not answering your door and et cetera, et cetera. But I was in surgery when this call was made. I was not anywhere close to home. I was under anesthesia for an entire day being operated on when that first call was made.
So right now, as of right now, there is no open CPS case against you that you are aware of currently, correct?
Currently, that I'm aware of, no. And I've asked for copies from CPS of any phone calls that were made against me. I learned also that there was another anonymous call while I was still in the hospital saying that Heather Hobbs, pro life speaker, was driving erratically with children unbuckled in the back seat. That one, of course, was closed out. So these calls may continue to happen. They may still be happening. I'm not sure, but I've asked for copies of all of this. And, I do have legal people in place that are ready to fight for me if need be. But all of these other parents out there, they may have no idea why their kids are taken right now.
Well, okay. Well, we are glad to find out that the CPS case against you is closed for now, and hopefully another one won't be open that is followed through on. So take care, Heather. God bless you, and thank you for joining us on the program. And of course, we'd always welcome you to come back in the future to give us any updates on this story or comment on other news in the pro-life front as well. Thank you, Heather.
Thank you, Christian.